You are listening to Rubber Minute, where words do remain.
Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to our second episode of the interview on Rubber Minute. This section is released on Fridays, and here we bring you some of the most pertinent, controversial and thought-provoking topics in the world today in conversation with the people at the very heart of the matter. The topic of this week is the scramble for vaccines. After the long months of confinement, we finally have some hope that the deadly disease will be eradicated. The vaccination process started in early January, and manufacturing rates of the cure are being increased constantly. The bigger part of the world's population, however, is still unsure when and what vaccine they will get. The production and distribution process is different in every country, as well as the chances to get the vaccine. Moreover, the countries are competing between themselves to get the cure as soon as possible, leaving smaller and less developed states disadvantaged. Today, we will explore and compare how these problems are being solved in Europe and India.
Good evening, Dr. Singh. It is such an honor to have you here with us. We are so glad that you agreed to do this interview for our podcast, Rubber Minute. I would like to begin by giving a short introduction of our esteemed guest. Dr. Singh is the Joint Director of the Provincial Medical and Health Services in Uttar Pradesh and has served as the President of the Indian Medical Association from Varanasi in the years 2017 and 2018. He has also been a social and medical activist for the last 2 decades. Today, we wanted to discuss the vaccination drive in India from our aspect of Asia for our episode on vaccinations around the world. Without further ado, let us start with the first question. Sir, can you please introduce yourself and tell us more about your experience as a doctor, someone who was working in the front lines in the midst of this pandemic? What problems were you facing? How was it so difficult for you? Because our students want to know more about the situation that you felt as a doctor.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Arvind Singh. As you have mentioned, I am the Joint Director in the Department of Medical Health in the state of Uttar Pradesh in India. And we have been a part of the preventive measures of the pandemic right from its very beginning. And being involved in the pandemic so much that almost we have seen the pandemic through, the most part of the pandemic through. So experiences you gather, because nobody had an experience of a pandemic of such a great magnitude even for a century ago. So therefore, it was all the more difficult to get in all that data that was coming in from all over the world, and then planning it out and implementing it in a socio-economic condition which is very peculiar to India. We are a huge population. We are very, very densely populated. And the day the pandemic started, doomsday was predicted for the Indian subcontinent. But unfortunately or fortunately, even after a year, it has been shown beyond all reasonable doubts that the Indian populace and the ancient wisdom of the Indian people, the collective wisdom of the Indian people along with the governance, has made a creative impact on stopping the pandemic from the predictions which were there for India.
So why do you think India did not choose, let's say, the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca vaccine, but the indigenous vaccines such as Covaxin and Covishield? Now, what we want to know is what are the differences that exist between these vaccines, and how is the Indian vaccine better than the ones that the rest of the world is using? And how is it different in terms of its storage? How is it different in terms of transportation, logistics, and impact on the population?
Okay, so before just to give you a start to the answer of why did India want to choose an indigenous vaccine, you have to understand that any country as large as India and with as huge a population as India, if it can produce a vaccine that is indigenously produced in the country, it gives a great amount of confidence not only to the working forces but also to the local populace. So because the Prime Minister was very keen that an Indian vaccine should be parallelly developed, and we should have an indigenous vaccine. The scientists worked towards it, and we were able to achieve what some in the West believed that we were not even capable of doing. But then why did we choose our indigenous vaccine? Because it suited our environmental conditions, and it suited our inventory. We could not have had a vaccine which would have been stored at a minus 75 degrees and would have been carried around in minus 75 degrees. It was not possible for a nation like us to have such huge investment in infrastructure for a vaccine which would be good and as equal as the two indigenously developed vaccines in the country. So that is why I think, and cost-wise also, it would be much, much cheaper, because we had to, for the first time in the history of this universe, all of us have to first time immunize the entire population. It's no more below 5 years and 5 to 9 years. It's the entire population that has to be vaccinated. Therefore, it becomes all the more necessary that vaccines are indigenously developed and used in the populace.
Okay, so my question still stands. How is India trying to vaccinate such a huge population in such a short span of time? Now, what are the difficulties faced by the government, the medical experts, and the rest? And how are they trying to tackle this? What are they doing to make the situation better?
Right. So I will give you some numbers, very important numbers, which will baffle everybody all around the world. So if we talk about the inventory, for a state of Uttar Pradesh, we have 1,308 cold chain processes. We have 30 walk-in coolers. We have 10 walk-in freezers. We have 3,574 ice-lined refrigerators. We have 4,060 deep freezers, and we have 17 solar units. This is just for the inventory control for the population of Uttar Pradesh. If we go to the countries, the whole country, how it is prepared, the figures will just baffle anyone. We, as a country, we have 28,932 cold chain mechanisms. We have 240 walk-in coolers. We have 70 walk-in freezers. We have 44,226 ice-lined refrigerators. We have 40,709 deep freezers, and we have 294 solar units to power our units all over the entire stretch of the country. Now, this is one part of the inventory. If we come to the second program part, the manpower, we trained 61,000 program managers in the entire country. We have 2 lakh vaccinators. We have trained them for the entire country. We have 3.7 lakh vaccinating team members which have been trained in the entire country. So you can imagine, on the basis of this, we have done 44,49,552 vaccinations in 19 days. And that's the beauty of the process.
Thank you so much for that, sir. That explains a lot. Now, but as compared to the rest of the world, where there are different priorities for different governments and different medical experts, such as the EU, which is giving more, let's say, they're taking a different approach by focusing on, where we are focusing on medical experts and frontline workers, and then the general population. The situation is slightly different in the EU. How do you think you're tackling this? And what approach is India taking that is different from the rest of the world?
So that's a nice purview to the whole thing. You have to understand, each culture in this world, each part of the world has a different culture and a different style of thinking and living life. They have different ethics and different beliefs and faith. Somehow, being a very old culture, we have developed resilience towards problems. We actually take problems on their face value, and the local populace also does not seem to get much bothered about something as cruel as death. Because I know you are from this place And Varanasi, the oldest living city on this earth, on this planet. And we believe that death is a form of festivity in this place. So death actually does not bother an ordinary Indian. Coming back to the point, that resilience that the Indian populace has developed because of different different nature of their whole cultural background has helped a lot. So if we first we started with a lockdown one. First we started with Tali and Thali, if you remember. When the Prime Minister went up and said, light up a Deepak and do this, because those were very traditional methods of removing bad omens from our homes. He inculcated the same mechanism and drove it into scientific thoughts. And then he said, okay, now we are locking down. So the locking down came as a shock to the Indian population. But I think the Indian population very well understood that this lockdown is for their good. And then we had lockdown 2 and lockdown 3. And by the time lockdown 4 was effective, already unlock 1 had started almost. So therefore, we may have been lucky that we may have had, with no scientific evidence to it, but we may have had a lesser immunogenic strain of the virus in this part of the world. Or maybe there are certain theories which say that the vaccination program in India about tuberculosis and BCG and other programs had helped them immunogenetically to deliver the right amount of resilience to the virus. It may have also been that the traditional Indian method of food and yoga and Ayurveda and the traditional Indian medicine kalas and other syrups may have helped in boosting immunity. So there may have been a very big cause of why the virus behaved so abruptly in the Indian scenario, because it did. And somehow we were spared of what we have thought would be a huge loss to humanity.
Thank you so much for that, sir. But my last question is for the day. How do you plan to counter the skepticism related to the vaccine and the disbelief faced by many people? How is it that you're going to convince the Indian population that the vaccine you're using is safe, it is tested and tried, and how can you engage people in believing that it's going to work?
Okay, so I will talk about this on the face value of the question. If you see the previous pandemics, no other country in the world have had such a death rate, whether it was the Spanish flu or the cholera pandemic or the plague pandemic. So you may say that we have a genetic inheritance of tackling pandemics. That is one thing. Yes, we have taken things lightly. But did we actually take things lightly? In the eyes of the West, it may seem that we took things lightly. But it is not that. It is an Indian way of living. And it is an Indian way of thinking that you seem to be taking things lightly, but on the other hand, you do the things which are exactly required to be done at that particular moment of time. So therefore, the lessons that we have learned from this pandemic, if you see the Indian budget that was presented on the 1st of February, we have a huge margin, 137% specific allocation to health than the previous year. That means we have learned the lesson. We have learned that our health infrastructure need to be tightened, although, God forbid, it was not at stake this time. The virus did not challenge the health infrastructure. If it would have done so, we would have been at loss.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a great experience interviewing you and to be able to speak with you, sir. And it has definitely made me look at India and its vaccination program from a different perspective than I did earlier. And it has deepened my knowledge about the problems that India faces and how it has tackled it and what the mentality of the people is. So thank you so much for being here with us. It has been an absolute...
Just before leaving, I would say I have had the first dose of my vaccine yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm perfectly... Yeah. I have been vaccinated with the first dose yesterday. And we have been doing on an application. It's an app known as COVID-Win. So we get registered that app, and then we get messages from the app. The exact date and timing where we'll be vaccinated is put up on that app, and the people go and get themselves vaccinated. So as a health worker, I was vaccinated yesterday. I am fine. I am absolutely fine, and I hope for my second jab a month late. Thank you. Thank you so much for calling me, sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so
It's
much.
my pleasure. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Apart from the vaccination process itself, another extremely controversial topic is the production and distribution of vaccines. Governments all over the world compete to sign deals with the largest COVID-19 vaccine producers and carry out vaccination campaigns as fast as possible. The struggling economies, as well as public dissatisfaction with the imposed restrictions, creates a huge pressure upon the decision makers to search for creative solutions. One of the most interesting examples of that could be an approach taken by the European Union. Today we have an opportunity to talk about it with the acting head of European Commission representation in Lithuania, Ms. Agné Kazlauskaitė. Thank you for joining us today, and could you please tell us what is so unique about the vaccine purchasing in the EU member states?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to join your show. Well, let me give you a bit a wider perspective. Perhaps we could start from the fact that the European Union is a bloc of 27 member states, and it has the population of 450 million people. So actually, the European Commission has negotiated intensively to build a diversified portfolio of successful vaccines for EU citizens. And actually, we took this decision together with the member states. It was not the European Commission alone who said, we'll do this together. So we received a clear mandate from all the member states of the European Union, from the governments and the leaders of the states, who said, okay, let's do this. Let's do this as a joint project. So we have now concluded contracts with 6 promising vaccine manufacturers, and we managed to secure a portfolio of more than 2.3 billion doses, which means that this is much more than is enough for the EU population. And we are doing this because we think that our responsibility does not end at the borders of the European Union. We are looking at the broader picture, at the global scale, because we think that until everybody is safe, no one is safe. So our aim as the European Union is, of course, to help all the other countries in the world to fight the pandemic and to provide access to safe and efficient vaccines.
Thank you very much. And then probably the next question, why do you think EU member states decided to purchase vaccines together as a bloc, and what are the particular advantages of such an action? Maybe it's better to buy it but just state by state.
Well, we have seen that this European joint approach is really valuable and really helpful, because we, as a bloc of 27 member states, have a much bigger negotiating power, which enables us, to conclude better contracts with vaccine manufacturers. So we think that, this joint approach is really helpful, and it shows our solidarity and helps us to achieve and gain better conditions. Just imagine if we had, 27 parallel negotiations taking place in Europe, meaning that if individual member states, had to conduct negotiations with different vaccine manufacturers. And also, what is also important is that we, as a bloc, as a family of 27 European countries, we screened around 100 manufacturing companies of vaccines. And after this, we chose a diversified portfolio of 6 vaccines, of 6 most promising vaccines. And in fact, I should also add that we have 2 more companies with whom we have concluded exploratory talks. This means that the conclusion of these talks can lead to negotiating the advance purchase agreements. So we think, that this joint approach is really valuable to our citizens, to everybody in the European Union, because just imagine what would happen if only 1 or 2 member countries of the European Union managed to secure enough vaccine doses.
Speaking about the current situation, at the moment, is the EU able to ensure smooth vaccination of the 27 member states? And are there any obstacles such as general unwillingness to be vaccinated, perhaps some degree of disinformation, and how is it being combated at the European level?
Yes, I think we can discuss here a few aspects, and I will try to develop them in my answer. That's a very good question. So if we look back at the very end of December, the vaccination process started in the European Union. Now it's being rolled out, and we see more doses arriving in the European Union and more people being vaccinated. Of course, this vaccination process will indeed take some time. It cannot happen overnight, and there are a few reasons for this. First of all, we see that the companies who produce vaccines, they really have manufacturing capacities, limited manufacturing capacities. It's not possible, to produce millions of doses in a very short period of time. So what we're doing, we're helping the manufacturing companies and also the member states in a few ways. So if I take, for example, the member states of the European Union, so our help can be manifested in a few ways. For example, last year in October, the European Commission presented very concrete and detailed recommendations for the member states on how to carry out the vaccination campaigns. So that is, we recommended the member states, to distinguish priority groups, who would be the first groups of the population to be vaccinated. So in many cases, in many member states, these are either medical staff or senior citizens. And then the vaccination campaigns will be rolled out to include other priority groups. What we're also doing is that we're helping the member states to buy, syringes and needles, all the equipment that is necessary for successful vaccination. And also, as we see that, the manufacturing companies face some limited, capacities of production, we have set up a task force led by the European Commissioner for the Internal Market, Mr. Thierry Breton, who will be leading, who will be discussing with the industry the problems that they face and the possible solutions, to increase and to accelerate the production of vaccines. And we're also thinking about, we will actually launch the Health Emergency Response Authority, which will also tackle very important issues that we are now facing as the entire world and the European Union, sees the virus mutations, and also the same issue of limited manufacturing possibilities. Scientists as well. We're also cooperating at the European level, together with the member states. We have the so-called rapid alert system, where all the EU institutions and the authorities of EU member countries can alert about the damaging narratives that may crop up in one or another country. I'll try to finish by one more aspect of this cooperation in order to fight disinformation. So we have established the European Digital Media Observatory, which is a kind of network that brings together media experts, journalists, fact checkers, scientists, academia, and researchers, to join our forces and to tackle the problem of disinformation.
The recent story with AstraZeneca raised questions about the implementation of contracts with the vaccine manufacturers. Can we expect similar stories with other vaccine producers? And more importantly, is the EU going to take legal action to enforce implementation of the contracts and ensure smooth supply of the vaccines? Could this have any consequences on the supply of vaccines in non-EU states?
Well, it's a very good question. Actually, I really do hope that this sort of situation will not be repeated. So let me explain and let me tell you more about this issue. Well, actually, yes, AstraZeneca is indeed one of the companies with whom we have concluded an advance purchase agreement, which means that, well, actually we concluded on behalf of the European Union back in August last year. And from that moment, the member states of the European Union were able to place their orders with the company, which means that, each member state could say, well, we will need this or that amount of doses. So we would like to buy this number of doses. So all the details, all the quantities per country were clearly known to AstraZeneca. And the company undertook contractual obligations. They said, okay, yes, we're able to produce these amounts of vaccine doses and to supply you as the member countries of the European Union with these doses in the course of the year 2021. But what happened is that AstraZeneca, unlike the other companies, recently said that they would drastically reduce the supplies promised for the first quarter of this year, but they, without giving any comprehensible reasons, for why they cannot deliver the amounts of the doses. And that's an important issue because of several reasons. First of all, the European Union invested almost 3 billion euros into the 6 companies with whom we achieved the advance purchase agreements, which means that including AstraZeneca, so all the 6 companies received really considerable pre-investment so that they could accelerate the development of vaccines and that they could prepare for the rapid production of vaccines. Well, actually, as soon as the contract was concluded in August last year, the companies could already start pre-producing the vaccine doses so that after the vaccine is authorized at the European level, the very same minute or the very same day, or next day, the company should be able to start delivering the vaccines to all the member states of the European Union. So, well, actually, we do understand that, companies might experience some really teething problems or some temporary glitches in this process, because we realize that to produce a vaccine, it really takes a lot. It's a complex process because sometimes you may need up to 400 ingredients to produce a vaccine. So that's what we accept. But if the company, one of the criteria to select the companies was to get the guarantee from the company that they would be able to manufacture the amounts of the doses that they indicated in the contracts that we concluded with them. So for us, it's really important, that AstraZeneca, clearly says what are the reasons for their significant delays in deliveries and for reductions in the amounts of the doses. So our aim, the aim of the European Commission, is to get the answers, clear answers from the company, and to see how we can help to address these problems and these issues.
Thank you very much for the conversation, Ms. Kazlauskaitė. It was a pleasure to have the acting head of European Commission representation in Lithuania on board with us today, talking about how the vaccination issues are being solved in the EU. And to our listeners, thank you for following our second episode of the interview on Verba Manent. The episode was written by Janvi and Sergey and produced by Lois and Srijan. Stay tuned every week for more conversations and questions on the topics which matter most. Take care, and until next Friday.